This episode of the Stockbury Dark is brought to you by Shop Shogun. Shop Shogun is your one-stop shop for the latest and greatest in punk, hardcore, and heavy metal merchandise. Officially licensed web stores from bands such as 100 Demons, Integrity, Disembodied, Madball, Agnostic Front, and many more. The Stockbury Dark, along with Shop Shogun, are offering a special code to discount your next order when you use it on their website. Use the promo code SDPODCAST to save 10% from your next order from Shop Shogun. Again, the code is SDPODCAST. Their website is shopshogun.com. Also, check out their page, Shop Shogun, on Facebook and at Shop Shogun Merch on Instagram. Hello and welcome to the Stockbury Dark. My name is Peter Morsey.
My name is Klaus.
And today we have Jesse Gustafson, aka Jesse Standhard, old friend of mine from Connecticut who's been in Boston for 20 some odd years. Played in many great bands over the last 15, 20 years. Tenfold, Right Brigade, Follow Through, Invasion, American Nightmare, like all-star dude, all-star bands. What's up, Jesse? Glad to have you here today,
guys?
man.
Thanks
How
for
you
having
doing?
me. Awesome.
Yeah, of course.
I always like to have a Gustafsson on the show.
Yeah, it's a Swede.
Yep.
You guys got a nice Swedish connection.
Yep, we do.
We have some lutefisk.
Yeah, have you ever had that? Have you ever had that?
Unfortunately, I have.
Yeah.
It's disgusting.
Yeah, that seems like a
terrible.
tough dish to put down. I watched a show once on how basically it was made, and it was like poison.
My grandmother was from Norway and my grandfather is from Sweden, and they had the very, very, very thick. My great grandparents had very, very thick accents. My grandparents lost their accents.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, for holidays we would have all sorts of wacky korv and lutefisk. The Swedish meatballs were the only things I actually liked.
What was the first thing you mentioned?
Korv, which was like a sausage sort of thing.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Which was pretty good. I actually like korv. Never mind. But lutefisk, disgusting.
Really?
Like that's one of those prank foods that you like blindfold somebody and dare them to eat it.
It's like very like ammoniated tasting, right?
Yeah, it's basically rotten.
Yeah, that's tough.
No. You're talking about surströmming.
Surströmming.
Right. I've
That's
never
the
had
one.
that.
No, I think lutefisk is just like some kind of white fish that's been boiled forever, and it's like white and dry and doesn't taste anything.
But super salty, right? And then they would reconstitute it with water, but they would use
No, I think
they would use lye in it.
That's surströmming. Different kind of fish, gentlemen.
Mm-hmm.
Well, these were the delicacies that we would have at like Christmas dinner and family gatherings. My grandfather loved tormenting us. You should have some lutefisk. Like, no, nope, not doing that again. You've already got me with that one.
So Jesse, we I don't know how I originally started talking to you about this. I mean, I remember you mentioned to me you listened to the episodes and you liked them and you had some stories, and I think a couple mutual friends also said that you had some interesting stories and maybe some types of ghost stories. And I know you put together a little list.
Yeah.
I think
You showed me the other day.
our mutual friend Justin, dance floor Justin's,
Justin
that is, told me you
Dittori?
had stories. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're actually, when I started listening to the podcast, I thought it was just such a cool idea and got hooked on it so quickly. And as I started listening to all the stories, I'm just like, I got, it started bringing back a bunch of memories of stuff that
Mm-hmm.
I really had forgotten over time. And it just comes to the front of my mind. I'm like, God, some of these are like really sketchy and like terrifying, especially when you're a
Mm-hmm.
kid.
Yeah.
And then I started thinking about some of the other stuff that I've experienced over time. And I'm like, I'm going to hit up Pete about this because
Yeah.
maybe this would make a cool podcast episode.
Mm-hmm.
So, give do you want me to just go straight into it?
Yeah, I mean, we can start with anything. You did some of these experiences you had. Do they start way back from when you were living in Connecticut as a kid?
Yeah.
And maybe we
So,
can get into our little Connecticut history with
sure,
yourself and where you're
sure,
from and all that, and we
sure.
can just kind of organically go through it from there.
So I was born in Marlborough, Connecticut, and I lived there uh, until I want to say second grade. I moved to Glastonbury, which was one town over.
Mm-hmm.
And my parents, I was in second grade. My sister might have been, entering kindergarten. And, it was one town over, but it might as well have been, a million miles away. And we moved into a nice, bigger house with 4 bedrooms, a couple bathrooms. My parents finished off the basement, and it was a great family house. It had a bunch of woods in the backyard, and you immediately met all the kids in the neighborhood. And it's one of those neighborhoods where every one of the houses was built in the late 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And I know the exact date of construction on the house was it was 1978. And grew up in a normal suburban setting, like
Right.
a lot of kids in Connecticut. And Marlboro, I grew up in a very, very old house. From once in a while, my grandfather's passed away. My grandmother still lives in Connecticut, and I swing by and see her in a nursing home once in a while. And we would drive by my old house, and I always forget how incredibly old the house I was born in. And it was turn of the century, but I don't really have many memories of that house. There was like a chicken coop and all that sort of stuff, but I really don't have any
Mm-hmm.
memories of that. So all my actual memories start when I moved into the house my parents still own, and as far as I know, they still live in it.
Mm-hmm.
But growing up in that house, nothing weird, nothing weird, nothing weird. And I've never actually told this story to even my parents. So like it's something I forgot until I really started listening to your podcast. And so I'm in, I think, 7th grade. And at the time I was at Gideon Wells, which is the junior high school. And my sister was, like I said, a couple years younger. So she was probably in about 4th grade. So I get home from school, give or take 3 o'clock in the afternoon. My sister doesn't get home probably till about 4:30. And I was playing basketball a lot. So 7th grade, playing basketball, doing normal kid stuff. You play video games. So I get home from school and I'm having a bowl of cereal. And just to give a quick layout of my parents' house, it was living room. You walk into the house, there's a living room, there's the eat-in kitchen, and then a hallway with a door leading down to the basement. It was a finished basement. Spent a lot of time down there. There was a pool table, and Nintendo was down there. So I'm sitting there having a bowl of cereal, and our dog, I can't remember which one it was. We had golden retrievers my entire life growing up. Very suburban thing. So I'm just sitting there with my back to the kitchen, and I'm having a bowl of cereal, and my dog, just like a typical golden retriever, is sitting there panting and panting and panting. And the dog just kind of freezes up and just stares like over my right shoulder and is just staring at the basement door. Now, my parents usually didn't get home until about 5 o'clock. My mother would get home 5-ish. My father wouldn't get home until much later. He drove for UPS, so he was usually getting home around 8. And the dog is staring over my shoulder like there's somebody there. Now, mind you, nothing weird had ever happened in this house. Like, nothing. I never felt uncomfortable, not for a second. So the dog is just staring over my shoulder, enough to make me turn and go, "What the hell are you looking at?" And I turn my head just in enough time to see the basement door just very slowly open and then very, very slowly close.
Wow.
And now I just freeze. And I'm thinking, what the hell just did that? Is it the cat? Because the cat's food was at the top of the staircase, but there's no way the cat would have opened the door completely, paused, and then completely closed the door. So I'm just completely frozen. The dog isn't moving. The dog is motionless. The dog is just staring right at the door. Probably about 5 seconds go by, and the two of us are just staring at the door. The door very, very slowly opens again, and I hear, like, I'm getting chills as I'm saying it again. Every time I've been telling this story recently, I get the chills. Door slowly opening, and I just hear, Jesse, Jesse. And now I'm just paralyzed. Door slowly closes, and I could not move. The dog doesn't even blink. The dog's not growling. The dog's not doing anything. I'm like, that's not the cat. And I couldn't move, absolutely frozen. Third time, door slowly, slowly, slowly opens. Hear my name one more time, Jesse. It's clear as day, like someone is whispering, not in my ear, like I can't really place where it was coming from. Like it sounded like it was coming from the basement, like door, but it was a whisper, but it sounded like it was coming from like the basement. I got up, that was it, grabbed the dog, like kind of broke out of that, not a trance, but just broke out of that, went outside, and I think I shot hoops outside of the basketball with a basketball for like 2 hours. My sister didn't come home. I don't even know where she was. My mom was the one who pulled in the driveway first. And I didn't say anything to her. It was cold out. So my mom was like, what are you doing outside? It's like, oh, I'm just shooting hoops. She's like, what the hell's the dog doing outside? Like tied up to like the garage door. What the hell's the dog doing? No, we just decided to hang out outside. It's like, okay, cool. Like, what? So I never said anything to her. To this day, I've never said anything to her. I've never told that story to my parents. I never told that story to my sister. I never asked them if anything weird had ever happened to them in the house.
Jesse, you were how old? You were how old?
I believe I was in 7th grade.
Yeah.
And it was just like so weird because, like, you know, I don't know, everybody who's been on the program has usually you'll feel something weird like happen. There's a weird feeling, like you feel, and I've never had any weird feelings in that house. I'd lived in that house since 1985, so this was probably, 1989-ish, and I never had a single weird feeling in that house. And it startled the hell out of me. And at some point, I don't have a relationship with my parents anymore. I don't speak with them. But maybe I'll bring it up to my sister at some point. Be like, did you ever have any weird experiences in this house? Because I did not go back into that basement for at least a year.
Really?
I didn't do anything. Like I used to play pool downstairs. I'm a terrible pool player, but I used to shoot pool downstairs all the time. I loved it. My Nintendo was downstairs. I just stopped using it. I did not want to go back downstairs in that basement. But I moved out after I graduated high school. I graduated in '96. Moved out. Still never said anything to my parents. Never said anything to my sister. Never had a single weird experience in that house ever again.
Mm-hmm.
But my initial reaction when I first saw it happen, as I'm trying to kind of run the whole scenario through my head, it was like, one of my friends trying to prank me.
Right.
And it just, pranking, at least when you're in 7th grade, it wasn't that big of a, like, oh, we're going to go prank everybody and videotape it. No, cell phones didn't even exist. But it's like, no one was there. There was nobody there. Like, I would have seen them. Like, I was staring straight at it, and there was nobody there. Like, I heard my name whispered a handful of times, like, very distinct. It wasn't just like the wind. It wasn't, a door creaking, making that sound. But it was absolutely someone whispering my name, and it was the freakiest thing at that point that had ever happened to me.
And I mean, neither were, like, the dog was there, and you weren't nodding off either. You were sitting and eating when it happened.
I was sitting there having a bowl of frosted mini wheats. I remember very well that I was eating frosted mini wheats. Because if you don't eat frosted mini wheats quick enough, they just turn into mush, and they turn disgusting. So I remember eating it very, very quickly. And it's so bizarre that was the only weird thing that ever happened in that house. Because, I know plenty of people that obviously you guys have spoke to that, there's houses that just have weird energy and wacky energy.
Yeah.
I never felt that. I lived in that house.
No reoccurrences ever since you left the place. Either,
Nothing. I had my cat, which slept on my bed every single night. I didn't realize I was allergic to cats until she died, and I had her for almost 18 years. And, at no point was that cat doing weird stuff that would like stare at doors. My dog never was staring at doors other than that one time. It was just so incredibly bizarre. And I've tried looking up the history of the house because, again, it was built in 1978. So it's not like it had, hundreds of years of history. But, it was built in 1978. We moved in 1985. I know nothing weird happened when we were living there.
Right.
At the time, I remember thinking like, I was super into heavy metal. I just discovered Slayer, and then, I remember burning a big pentagram in my backyard. And when I say big, I'm talking like half the size of a basketball court. Took a big thing of gasoline, and this is the first time I ever lit gasoline on fire. And I put this giant pentagram in my backyard one evening. So just as the sun started going down, I burned this massive, like half basketball court size pentagram in my backyard. And gasoline goes up really, really quickly. And holy crap, that thing just lit up the entire neighborhood. And I'm trying to now put it out. So in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, like, wait, did I like open some weird portal? Like,
right.
like being like a freshly minted metalhead? Like, did I just do something weird? Like, what? I don't know. Like, but, this is like, did I just really become a metalhead? Like a true metalhead? And now is like Satan trying to talk to me? But like, it was just so bizarre.
Yeah, I get
so
that feeling totally. Because as a kid and being into bands like that, I remember so many times sitting in my bedroom and listening to like bands like Hellhammer or Merciful Fate, and
sure,
freaking myself out from the cover artwork and the lyrical content, and sitting there alone listening to music and wondering, is something bad going to happen while I'm listening to these bands? And at that age, you feel like you almost have that power to like bring something forward, so
yeah.
I can totally relate to like wondering if you caused that problem yourself.
Yeah.
By this like diabolical type of music that you're listening to. And that's a real familiar feeling for myself.
I had the same thing with Bathory.
Yep.
Here.
Well, and that dates back so far with what goes on in Scandinavia.
Yeah. I remember the first. I can't believe I've never brought this up. The first time I ever saw pictures of Bathory, I was like going to this must be the mid 80s. I was going to the supermarket with my mom, and they at the supermarket they had, since magazines and glossy magazines were so big back then, they had like a whole little section with metal magazines. And I remember looking at pictures of Bathory. It must have been Bathory and Venom, and seeing them like posing with swords and axes and all that stuff. And I thought, like, how is it possible that these guys had traveled here from the Middle Ages to have pictures taken on them? And like, was there metal?
Like, where do these guys come from?
Yeah.
I mean, Corthon was like, he took so many amazing pictures back then, like kneeling in pentagrams with swords and hair covering his face. He looked like the devil incarnate himself. There was nothing like, he was like the originator of true black metal.
I agree.
And
There would
very
always be like in Metal Maniacs magazine.
Teenager. He was the person that struck that fear into you. Yeah, I can see that.
In issues of Metal Maniacs magazine, I remember going to CVS, and occasionally they would have a new issue of Metal Maniacs, and you would find, there'd be Exodus and Anthrax and bands like that, but there would always be those, like the Scandinavian bands. Like, who are these guys? Like, what are these guys up to? These guys are carrying axes.
A world apart.
Yeah,
a world apart.
Yeah,
I can briefly. I remember this. It's not. I don't even think it's a ghost story, but I convinced myself it was when I was a kid. Because I think I was in 7th or 8th grade. I just bought "Don't Break the Oath" on vinyl, which the cover itself is terrifying. It's like that demonic like night beast coming out of the fire with his hand reaching forward. And I remember it was me and two of the neighborhood guys that were into metal. We were listening to "Don't Break the Oath" in my bedroom, and mesmerized by it. It was really silent. We're sitting there just listening. We never heard nothing like King Diamond before, and we knew it was like truly evil music. Played the record. The guys went home. I went downstairs. I came back upstairs to look at the record because it was like burned into my brain, and the record was gone. And I was convinced that it just disappeared, you know. To this day, I don't know if these guys stole it. They were two of my best friends. There's no way. Like, I know they wouldn't have stolen it. My mom wasn't home. You know, I could picture her seeing it and freaking out and throwing it away or getting rid of it. But no one was home, and the record completely disappeared. And I was convinced for like a couple of years that it's just like maybe God or something religious didn't want me to own this record because it was so truly evil. And I never saw it again. It never came back.
Really?
And yeah, it's just like a weird, you know, who knows where it went, but I definitely don't have it. I catalog every record
nuts.
since
My dad
at that age.
confiscated my British Steel record because he thought it was cocaine propaganda, and I was like maybe 9 years old.
With the big razor blade on the cover.
Yeah.
And then there were records that truly terrified me, like I was saying, the first Hellhammer record, the artwork on that record was so scary. You know, it was like that like decaying skeletal demonic beast sitting on a throne, and it had this giant penis that was just like in front of it. And I remember I put the record on the first time, and it was so terrible and atrocious sounding to me. So I never heard nothing like that. And the artwork was so disgusting. I remember I smashed it. I broke it in half. I was like, I do not want this. You know, it scared me. I was like in 7th grade.
Wow.
I went to a Catholic school, and it scared the hell out of me. And then a year later, I rebought it, and then I truly appreciated it. It took me a year to like come back to it, but that's how much it like freaked me out as a kid.
Do you remember
on the music like that?
Remember Carcass, and I think it might have been their first full length that had all the cut up pieces of like disemboweled humans and like flayed humans. I remember going to Tower Records. I went to my grandmother's house in New York. She lived just outside of New York City, and we'd go down to Tower Records. And when CDs used to come in those long boxes, I would go down and pick out. I remember buying Blood, Sweat, and No Tears in the long box, and I still have the long box. And that first Carcass record with that long box with all the flayed humans and guts and stuff on it, it's like, how could this not be good? So I bought that, put it on the CD. I had the little, the CD player Walkman deal. And I remember putting that on and just feeling sick listening to it. So I'm looking at the liner notes and everything. I'm like, I've never heard anything like this. Like, I've heard Slayer, I've heard Metallica. Like, what is this? And even looking at the imagery, like, and I just started feeling nauseous looking at it.
Yeah.
Oh, this is
next level death metal.
Brutal. But like, my cousin and I, well, my second cousin, I should say, he lived in Rocky Hill, and we were probably about 2 years apart, and we both kind of got into heavy metal together at the same time. So he would actually be the first person that started bringing me to shows. Like, we would go to the Boiler Room together, and like, he would pick me up. He'd drive to Glastonbury, bring me to New Britain, and we'd go to the Sports Palace and stuff like that. So he was actually one of the first people to bring me to shows. But we both got into heavy metal about the same time. And like, there's no bands in particular that we both loved or hated. We just liked everything that we could come across. There was a record store on the Berlin Turnpike that had all sorts of, it was the best source for like heavy metal at the time. It was basically like the Trash American style for heavy metal. Can't remember the name of the place, but it had everything. But like, we all together, we thought that like Satan was the coolest thing, and like we got all sorts of like into Satan, and we started playing around with a Ouija board at the same time, and that whole thing. No, you're pushing it. No, you're pushing it. No, dude, you're pushing it. No, you're pushing it. And we played around with a Ouija board, and nothing weird ever happened. We'd always blame each other for pushing the thing. I remember trying to get my sister and his sister, my other second cousin, in on it at the same time, and they were just horrified. And I think they ran away crying one day. But never anything really weird happened with the Ouija board. But he and I, we lost touch years and years and years ago. I have no idea where he is now. But he and I both got into the occult stuff at the same time. And, we'd spend tons of time at the library. And my hometown library in Glastonbury was this huge, huge, huge old building. And the town that I grew up in was a very old town. It was established, I want to say, in the 1600s. And, there's still houses standing from the 1700s. But it was this huge library. And I remember going there in junior high, and, their high school library sucked. There was no cool books in there. So we go to the public library, and you go to find as many, occult related books as possible. Like if it had to do with the devil in one way or another, or like UFOs, like you bet your ass I was going to take those things out, and I was reading those books. I managed to make it all through high school without reading a single book, like no assigned reading books. I've never read a novel in my life, but you bet your ass I've read every single book in that library about UFOs and witchcraft and stuff like that, because I was totally into that. So you find something you're passionate about, and you're gonna go in head first.
Yeah.
But that was just such a cool way of the internet wasn't a thing, and you would have to go in and remember those old card catalogs, and you'd have to physically like go and find what you were looking for in the card catalog, and then you have to go find it in a library. And it was like finding a great record, and you're just kind of digging in the crates for records. It was the same thing at the time, like looking for books, because as a young metalhead, like you want to find out as much as you can about Satan and anything evil. So I tried my best to do that, and that library was a smorgasbord of that sort of stuff. There were dozens and dozens and dozens of books, and I checked those things out constantly. And of course, my mother, she'd take me to the library, and she'd be like, "Oh, so what are you taking out?" She's like, "What the hell's wrong with you? Like, why can't you read like I don't know, Catcher in the Rye? Why can't you read why can't you read normal books?" It's like, I don't know, because look at the cover of this book. How could this book not be good? So, but it just kind of like opened my interest in that sort of stuff. Now, I'm not religious by any means, and this is kind of like opening the door to the next story. I'm not religious by any means, but like most parents whose kids are becoming teenagers, who have long hair or start shaving their heads, and they want their kids to be good Catholics. What did my parents do? They sent me to East Catholic in Manchester, Connecticut, for my freshman year in high school. And I got kicked out after, I want to say like 3 months or so. They politely asked me not to come back after Christmas break. And I wanted nothing to do with it. And a lot of my friends' parents, they all sent them to East Catholic as well. And so you put like 5 or 6 of my friends who are all total degenerates all in the same school. So, of course, we're going to still do degenerate hood shit no matter what. So they actually formed this class. And I don't know how long the school had been there. The school had been there for 50 years. And they would have, like, quote unquote, the meanest nun teaching the class of 6 of us. Now, there was 5 kids that we all went to junior high together. And there was this other kid who we immediately gravitated towards because he was the dude we didn't know that got put in this class that is all the worst kids in the school. So we'd have a nun come in. She would try to be strict to us. Everybody would tell her to F off. And we made different multiple nuns cry. And I thought it was cool because I was into the devil, but I was also like just discovering hardcore and all that sort of stuff. But this kid, and I can't remember what his last name was. I know his first name was John. And we totally hit it off. He was the one other like real misfit from the school, other than the kids I already was sort of friends with. So he lived in Manchester, and he lived about a 15-minute walk away from the school. And like I said, we hit it off. And he said, "Hey, if you want to come over," this is September of my freshman year there. There was a girl who would pick me up, give her $1 a day to pick me up and bring me to school, and I'd pay her $1 to bring me home because it was a good 7 miles or so from my parents' house. And, I told her one day, I was like, "Hey, I'm actually going to go to this kid's house. I'm going to go play video games, so I don't need a ride home." And, I didn't even give any thought of how the hell am I getting home. So he told me, this is again, September. So it was early on in the school year. He's like, "Yeah, I got a lot of weird stuff that happens at my parents' house." All right, cool. No big deal. And I'd only had that one other instance happen to me at that point in my life. At my parents' house with the door opening and closing and hearing my name. So I didn't really pay any mind to it. And we go to his house and we're sitting there playing video games. And, what are you supposed to do when you don't have a driver's license? So just to paint a picture of his house, it was a, classic ranch where it had the garage. You park in the garage, you walk into that kind of unfinished wood paneled sort of basement area. You walk up the stairs and like 3 bedrooms on one side of the house with a bathroom. At the top of the basement stairs, there was the kitchen, the little dining area attached to the kitchen, and the living room off the dining area. So in the living room is where he has, they have the TV, and he has his whatever we're playing, Nintendo or Super Nintendo or whatever. We're sitting there playing Nintendo, and he just, we're sitting there, just kind of laughing, telling jokes, playing video games, and he just goes, "Oh, dude, there it was. Did you hear it?" I'm like, "No, what? Hear what?" He's like, "Just wait a minute." So now we're just sitting there in silence, and I don't hear anything. I'm like, "Is this kid just messing with me? Like, what the hell?" And he's being, he's just staring, and I don't hear anything. A couple minutes go by, and he's like, "There it is." It's like, "Dude, I don't hear anything." And now I'm like, this kid's totally just pranking me. So he's like, "All right, come here. Let's go into the kitchen." So we walk into the kitchen, and he's standing there staring at the door. It's always basement doors. I don't know what it is about basement doors. Staring at the basement door, which is closed, and then I hear 3 or 4 footsteps going up from the basement stairs, and they're old wooden stairs, and you clear as day would hear somebody walking up those stairs. And I hear 3 or 4 footsteps going up the stairs, and then 3 or 4 footsteps going back down the stairs. And I was like, "Dude, is that your brother?" And I had never met his brother, but I knew he had a brother that was a couple years younger, who would have been getting home from school around that time. And we're just standing there, and I'm like, "Dude, this dude's brother is just gonna like come running out the door and just trying to scare me." So we're standing there for a couple more minutes in like complete silence, and he's like so zoned in on this, and I'm just preparing myself to get punked. And then, clear as day, I hear a couple more footsteps coming up the stairs, and then it pauses, silence, a couple more footsteps walking back down the stairs, and I'm really getting freaked out at this point. So we're standing there again, a couple more minutes, and he's telling me, "Dude, like this happens like a lot, but like we're really getting it good right now, because sometimes it just happens and don't get it again." I'm like, "Okay, like what the hell, dude?" So now he's just like, "All right, let's just get ready for it." It's like what do you get ready for it? So this dude, like we hear it walking up the stairs, here's all the footsteps or whatever it is, like 12, 15 steps, and like I'm getting the chills just telling the story. My heart's like pumping again just telling the story. So this dude grabs onto the door handle, and here we hear it just walking. Like now it's really coming up the stairs. Dude flings the door open when it sounds like it's right at the top of the stairs, and there's absolutely nothing there. And I'm like, he's standing obviously right there because he opened the door, and I'm standing probably about 4 or 5 steps back from the door, like expecting someone to jump out at me. And there's absolutely nothing there. And I'm just like, "Yo, what the hell is that?" And I'm like, just kind of like trying to poke my head to see down, like, is your brother standing there? There's nobody there. And he goes, "Okay, you ready for something freaky?" Dude just slams the door closed, and within 2 seconds of him slamming the door closed, you just hear footsteps walking back down the stairs. I'm like, okay.
It's almost like a game he plays with this ghost.
Oh. So, of course, now I'm just like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, look at the time." So I hung around for probably 10 or 15 more minutes and just was like, "I'm out of here. I want nothing to do with this." And, of course, he keeps elaborating on, "Oh, we have this happen all the time, and I hear footsteps here." It's like, "Dude, I'm good." So I end up leaving his house, and it's, 4-ish, give or take. And I never gave any consideration to how the hell am I getting home. So it was a good 4+ hour walk back to my parents' house.
Wow.
So I show up at my parents' house at 8 o'clock, 8:30 at night. And I remember my parents being like, "Where the hell were you? What were you doing?" I was like, "Oh, I was over at this dude John's house playing video games." They're like, "What? Until when? When did?" I was like, "Oh, I just walked home." Didn't say anything. Like, "No, this weirdo's house, freaking ghosts walking up and down these stairs." But it just like was so terrifying when he flings the door open and there's nobody there. That was scary as could be. But when he closed that door, and he like he's done this a million times, he closes the door and just there it is. There's the clunk, 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 footsteps walking back down the stairs. It's like, dude, what is it about basement doors? Like, what is it about basements? Like I hate basements.
I'm just thinking that even though he lived with it, that's a pretty tough kid.
Oh,
that's a pretty tough kid.
Like the balls.
Yeah.
The balls on him just to be like, "Yep." Like I couldn't do that again. Like, I want nothing to do with that.
I mean, how common could it have been for him to just know, like, how close it was going to get, and then to open and shut the door, and then he knew it was going to commence immediately after closing the door? I mean, that's pretty wild.
Yeah, I never really followed up with him very much. I certainly never went back, but I never really followed up with him. Like, how many times has that happened? Because he would say, something along the lines of, this happens in my house all the time. It's like, dude, you clearly have done that before. Like, that is so incredibly unnerving. It's like, dude, there's nobody there. There's absolutely nobody there.
And he didn't go into any more detail about, like, any other things that happened at the house? Like, did he ever have any sightings or anything like that?
I don't remember him ever saying that he saw anything. It was always just constant, like, shuffling. I remember specifically using the word shuffling. There's always something shuffling about. There's always footsteps. You're always hearing something coming up and down the stairs. But I only knew him for another 2 months, and that was it. Like, I was gone, and I went back to public school. Right. But I would love, like, I don't even have a yearbook from that high school. I would love to try to track him down if I could remember his last name. And it's, as we've been talking for the last week about doing this, I've been, like, racking my brain of, like, what was this dude's last name? I want to try to find him on Facebook and just, like, ask, like, anything else cool? Got any more freaky stories about your house? But that was just so incredibly unnerving. Well, yeah, from then, that was like I said, my freshman year in high school. Nothing else weird happened to me for many, many, many years. I don't remember anything freaky happening. I don't say I have any, like, sense, and I know some people have, like, a strong sense for supernatural sort of stuff, but I don't think I have a sense whatsoever for it. I think it's just two situations in 13 years of my life at that point. Yeah, literally right place, right time, where it's just, okay, you live long enough, you're gonna have some weird stuff happen to you. But I was probably 12 or 13 years old, and I had two things happen to me, and I don't think anything really happened until I've been selling residential real estate. I work for Sotheby's International Realty in Boston, and I started selling real estate in 2007. And now I have access to thousands and thousands of houses, and all the houses around here are really old. Most of, like, my wife and I, we bought a condo in 2005 or something like that, and it was, the date they put on it was 1900. And when the date of construction says 1900, means they have absolutely no idea about the age of construction. So we figured it was somewhere late 1800s for the year of construction. And somehow it came up shortly after we bought the condo. She's like, "Do you think anyone ever died in here?" It's like, yeah, absolutely, somebody died in here. People have died in every one of these houses because no one went to the hospital to die in 1895. So she was a little freaked out by that, but that's just part of living in an area this old, where if you're living in a house from the 1800s and very early 1900s, there's a 99% chance that someone has died in that house.
Yeah. So, where are you in Boston, Jesse?
I'm in West Roxbury, so I'm actually the last house in the city limits. So I live in a beautiful neighborhood, but don't have to pay the ridiculous price to live in that great neighborhood. Right. But I'm 20 years now, like, in the city limits, which is crazy to think of. So so I started selling real estate in 2007, and like I said, I had access to all these houses, and I would show clients. My job is helping people buy houses, helping people sell houses, and 2007, I got my license. Start figuring out the market, and then the market completely collapses, and there's foreclosures all over the place. Property values are super, super low, and people are walking away from houses, so there's a lot of abandoned homes. And as I'm cutting my teeth in the business, I'm taking people. And if I find somebody who's looking to buy something, I'll take them wherever. Just to build a relationship with somebody and help them find something to buy. And I don't care if I had to drive an hour outside of the city or even further. So I would go all over the place in Metro Boston. And I can't remember if this was the first situation I had happen, but it was one of the very first. So it was around, like, 2009, and we were in Salem. And everybody knows Salem witch trials. And Salem, it's only about maybe 12 to 15 miles outside of Boston, but it takes at least an hour to get to it because of traffic. So I take this young girl, she's probably a little bit younger than I was. I was maybe 30 or so at the time. and she was probably in her mid to late 20s. And she was a first-time home buyer. We'd seen a handful of condos at the time. Like, she was looking for a condo and not a house. And she loved the idea of living in Salem because the history and, there's a lot of like cultural stuff going on in Salem. And, she was just really locked in on Salem as a town. And, I've shown her a couple places over the past couple weeks, and we have a nice rapport. She's grateful for someone trying to help her, because a lot of people didn't want to help her because she was looking at a much lower price point than a lot of the area. Mm-hmm. So, we'd seen a bunch of places, and I set up an appointment to see this condo, and I was trying to find the property information on it, and I can't remember the street, but it was off Derby Street. Derby Street is a main thoroughfare in Salem. And my friend Clevo actually lives a couple blocks from this. And the age of the house was definitely from the 1700s, late 1700s. And it was a house that was chopped up into a couple condominiums. And, we make an appointment, we go in, it was definitely warm out, because this is a big part of the story. So it was definitely warm out. It was 2 living levels with the bedrooms upstairs and all the living space, living room, kitchen, et cetera, on the first floor. So we walk in, there's nobody living there. There is some furniture there, and we walk in. She kind of makes a beeline for the kitchen, because she was all about the kitchen. And I went upstairs, and it was just one of those things where you go from, it wasn't a day like today where it's 90 something degrees out, but it was certainly hot. And there's no air conditioning, there's nobody living there, but you walk in and it's still probably in the high 70s inside the apartment. And she goes to the kitchen, I walk upstairs, and usually as you go up, it gets hotter. I go upstairs, and immediately it's got that weird, heavy feeling. And I'd never experienced anything like it. That weird, heavy feeling, and it got freezing cold in the matter of like, if there's 12 to 15 steps going up, that last 2 or 3 steps, the temperature must have dropped like 30 degrees when I got up there. And I'm standing there, and it's a feeling you can't describe of just, it's like if someone's standing on your chest almost, or if you ever go to the beach and you get, someone digs a hole and you get buried in the sand and you really can't breathe, and it's super, super dangerous. It's kind of that feeling where you really can't breathe. And I wouldn't say I lost my breath, but it was just like a really heavy feeling where I couldn't move my chest and I couldn't like take full breaths. And it hits me. I'm like, dude, what is this feeling? Like, I couldn't put words to it. Like, nothing happened, but it just felt so incredibly heavy and freezing cold. And she comes like kind of running over to the staircase, because I'm now standing like right at the top of the staircase. She just goes, "We need to get out of here." It's like, "Is everything okay?" And I start walking down the stairs, and I'm kind of startled at this point. And she's like, I just got the weirdest feeling in the world that I've never had. We need to get out of here." Like, okay, let's get out of here. And I kind of like, I'm just trying to shake it off. Like, holy shit, like what the hell happened to me? And what the hell just happened to her?
So did you immediately know, like, have a feeling you're both feeling that same thing?
Probably. But here's like the real kicker. We go outside, the property's on a lockbox. So, the agent who's representing the seller just gives us a combination to get access to a key. And then we're supposed to lock it up on the way out. So on the way out, I'm locking the door and putting the key back in the lockbox. And there's another real estate agent that shows up. And they're getting out of their car. And my client and I had not really spoken. Like, we're just out. Both of us had the same idea in mind to just get out of this house. So we're locking up the door, and there's a real estate agent just pulled up right in front of the house. And she's like, "Oh, were you guys showing the apartment?" Like, "Yeah." She's like, "Oh, we're showing it next. Did you see anything?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "Anything? Do you see anything weird in the house?" And I was like, "Wait, what do you mean?" And now my client and I both look at each other like, we just both experienced some weird ass shit right now. And this other agent, very, very nice. She was based in Salem. She's like, "Oh, there's a history of this house. Like, it changes hands every year or so if someone buys it, because people just can't live in it for a long time." And this is killing me that I can't figure out the address, because I looked up on the map, and of course there's like dozens and dozens and dozens of condos which have changed hands in the last 10 years, and I can't even place the street. So like, she's like, "Oh, so this changes hands. Someone will close on it. They'll live here for a year, and they just can't live here anymore." I was like, what the hell? So the person she's with isn't even like a real buyer. She's like, oh, I don't even take buyers here. I would never let one of my buyer clients buy this. We come here to just experience weird shit. And I'm like, okay, because that definitely just happened. And they're like, really? Like just now? And they're asking me, like, what happened? I was like, well, I went upstairs and it's freezing cold. They're like, did you see something? I was like, I didn't see anything. Like, but it was freezing cold and I just felt like I couldn't breathe. It just felt like all the breath and oxygen was taken out of my lungs. They're like, that's amazing. Let's get in there. I was like, all right, peace. So my client and I, we both get back in my car. She was living in Roslindale at the time. So, I was driving her back and forth up to Salem to show apartments. And that was the last time, like, I never heard from her ever again. Like, I think that experience was just like, it's not something that I did, but she would just, nope, I'm done. I'm not, I don't know if I want to buy a place. I don't know what I want to do, but I literally never heard from her. I would call her, text her, email, nothing, never heard from her ever again. So I don't know if that just freaked her out so much that she just pieced completely, but that was just such a powerful feeling of like, you were so completely, I wasn't incapacitated, but like something was just like pressing on my chest and I couldn't breathe while I was still standing. Like I could move, but you hear the stories of, people feel like an extreme cold and then they see something and I didn't see anything, but oh my God, I've never experienced a feeling like that ever again. Thank God.
It's pretty amazing. In the circle of realtors, they knew there was something going on in that house, and it was well known.
And if I'm going to keep digging for that address, and if I can find that address, and if it ever comes up for sale again, I promise I'll take you to it.
Oh, that would be cool. We'll definitely take a walk through there.
It'd be a cool field trip.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't really talk about this.
I would just like to live in a place like that where on a hot day you can go upstairs and not have to turn the air conditioning on. So
seriously, my air conditioning bill is ridiculous.
I would deal with that.
I've never really told these stories. Like I really have never told these stories to my colleagues because it's not like I have hundreds of stories like this. I have a couple, just really, really weird, wacky experiences. And even the stories when I was a little bit younger, I've never really shared those stories until just now.
Yeah.
I've told them to a couple people, but I've really never told them to my friends. I've never told them to my family. And, the experiences while I've been out showing property, I really haven't shared them. But I'm sure a lot of other people have experienced stuff like this because of how old these houses are. There was another one where it was in the town of Milton, which is just south of Dorchester, which is like the southernmost point in Boston. It was like the Lower Mills area. So Dorchester and Mattapan abut the town of Milton. Milton's a very, very nice, very affluent suburb just south of Boston. And same thing, very old, probably established in the late 1600s. And this was in 2010. And it was, I can't remember the date in April, but it was definitely Saturday in April 2010. The reason I remember this is because the NFL draft was going on this day, and it was the day the Patriots drafted Rob Gronkowski. So if that name's familiar to anybody. So it's a two-family house, and I have these clients, Mike and Veronica were their names. And Mike was your typical Boston dude, had the accent, the whole 9 yards, and Veronica was from Ireland, very thick Irish brogue, and they were looking for a two-family house. I think they had a little kid at the time. It was now probably 7 or 8 years old, but they had a little kid at the time. They were looking for their first home together, and we would go and see stuff around there. They had really, really crazy schedules, so we'd be seeing stuff at random times of the day. Sometimes at 7 o'clock at night, sometimes at 8 o'clock in the morning, but never in the middle of the day. So it's about. I know we had an appointment at 4:30, and I got to the house at about 4:10, maybe 4:15. And it was April, and you know how the sun goes down still pretty early in April, and it's pretty much dark by 6-ish. So I get to the house about 15, 20 minutes early, and it's a bank-owned property. And now bank-owned homes, the water's been turned off, the doors are all locked up, nobody's living in bank-owned properties. There's usually still electricity running in the house, but nobody can live in it. There's just The gas has usually been shut off for safety reasons. The plumbing's been turned off so the pipes don't freeze, but the electricity's still on in the house. So there's a lockbox on this. I get there, like I said, 20 minutes early, walk up to the door, enter the padlock combination. It wasn't even just like a key. It was an actual padlock that was keeping the door open and closed. So I let myself in, and I'm just wandering around the first floor, hitting all the lights. And there's no furniture in it. There's absolutely nothing in it. 2 families, one apartment on the first floor, apartment on the second floor. So I'm just flicking on all the lights, and I'm now sitting in the kitchen, and they should be there in the next 15 minutes. And I'm just sitting on my phone, leaning against the countertop in the kitchen, and I just hear footsteps upstairs. And at first I just kind of shrug it off because, these are old houses. I'm used to hearing people walking around upstairs. And then it's just kind of that feeling of, oh, wait a sec, nobody lives here. The hell was that? And I'm like, is it, squatters or the crackheads upstairs? And then I hear more footsteps. And it wasn't just like clear as day, like I'm walking from point A to point B and then, sitting down. It was, there's about 5 or 6 steps going one direction, then it stops. And then it picks up again, 10 seconds may go by, 30 seconds went by, and then another 5, 6, 7 steps going in another direction, starting and beginning in all sorts of different places right above me. And I'm just sitting there like, what the hell? And this must have happened 5 or 6 times with a good 30 seconds in between, like each grouping of footsteps. And it was always starting and stopping in different places. So I'm like, there couldn't be anybody upstairs. Like the door was padlocked shut. So if someone was inside, like they've been locked in that property for who knows how long. So I go outside, and it was dark enough and dim enough out that if someone was home, like there would be lights out, but it was still light enough out that you could still see what was going on. So I'm walking around the entire perimeter of this house, and it's an old salt box colonial. I don't have the exact date of construction, but it was late 1800s, and big salt box, big square salt box colonial. And the second floor was pretty low because the ceilings in the building were pretty low, but it was low enough where if I stepped back far enough, I could see clear into the second floor of the apartment just from walking around the perimeter of the house. And there's no furniture in there. There's no lights. There's no curtains. There's no nothing. So I do 2 full spins around the property. I was like, all right, I'm going to go back inside. I'll go back inside. And I just lean against the countertop, of course, like right near the entryway to the front door. And, the entryway, there's just mail that had been collecting for months and months and months. And that's literally the only thing in this property. So I'm just sitting against the countertops, and I'm just staring at the ceiling. And probably 5 minutes go by, and I'm like, I don't know, maybe I was just hearing something. I'm trying to convince myself of why I should go upstairs. And I'm telling myself, well, there's no way in hell I'm going upstairs until these guys get here. So I'm just leaning against the countertop, and then sure enough, starts up again. There's 5, 6, 7 steps, then it stops. 5, 6, 7 steps, then it stops. And it's just all over the place. And it wasn't like somebody was running, but it was just clear as day, dunk, 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 dunk. People walking, like, it's not super heavy-footed, but it was absolutely people walking around upstairs or footsteps upstairs. So I'm just like, that's it. I'm done. I run through the apartment real quick, turn off all the lights, padlock the door. It's like, whoever's in this place, I'm locking up this door, and they're going to be stuck in that place. F you. There was nobody in there. So yeah. I go and walk down this long set of, the concrete pavers leading towards the sidewalk, and my car is parked right on the street, right in front of the long walkway. And I'm just sitting there, I'm like shaking my head in disbelief. I'm like, dude, what the hell? My clients pull up right at 4:30. They're like, oh, sorry to keep you waiting. You've been waiting long? I'm like, oh, no, I've been here for like 15 minutes. Like, oh, did you go inside? I was like, yeah. They're like, oh, what do you think? I was like, we're not going in there. Like, what do you mean? So I tell them what happened. And of course, Mike, dude, kid, we got to get in there. We got to go take a look at all that. I want to go up there and see that. It's like, nope, I'm not unlocking that door. And his wife, Veronica, is, Michael, under no circumstances are we going into that house. I'm like, nope, not going in. He wanted to go in there so bad. He was saying, like, I want to kick the ghost's ass, kid. So he was just bossing us through and through. Yeah. Never saw that dude without a scally cap. Like, he played the part very well.
Yeah.
They ended up buying, they loved old houses. They ended up buying like an old, like early 1800s farmhouse in Foxborough, Massachusetts, because they loved old houses. But I kind of lost touch with them. I spoke with her a couple years ago, and like we joked about, like, oh, remember how your husband wanted to go see that? She's like, oh, my husband's an asshole. He's crazy. Ah. But it was just so freaky when you're standing there in this, dimly lit apartment because there's not a lot of houses in it, or not a lot of lights in it, and you're just hearing things walking around upstairs. And I'm like, dude, there's nobody. I know there's nobody up there. But that is absolutely something moving around and walking around upstairs.
Yep.
Like it wasn't a cat. Like it wasn't, like I don't even know what else it could be. Like there was no way someone else. There was no way somebody else was in that apartment because just like you can picture it, it's padlocked from the outside. Nobody's getting in, nobody's getting out. But it was just so incredibly freaky.
I mean, being in and out of all these old homes in the Boston area, and especially being a realtor, there's got to be other realtors that have a lot of these similar stories. Have you ever heard from any other people in that field outside of the homes that you dealt with?
I haven't, because I really haven't shared these stories really.
Yeah.
Like this is the first time I've really shared these stories publicly. And passing, I've said it to a colleague here or there, but I've never really shared the stories publicly. Not for, if I don't care if someone thinks I'm a freak. But no, like this is real. Like this absolutely happened. And I'm not a religious person by any means. People can call it what they think it is, but there's definitely something there. Yeah. Like I think there's a whole nother plane that we can't even see. Like there's stuff going on in another plane of existence all around us that we can't see. It's just, I'm sitting here in my office right now, and for all I know, there's like 40 people sitting in here with me.
Right.
And they're all laughing and pointing at me. Like, we're here, man.
I mean, every person we've had on the show has been fairly level-headed, straightforward person that you would never think would, have any stories that are out of the ordinary or bizarre or extremely like crazy to listen to. And everyone's had something, and I can respect everyone and everything they've said. Like it's I don't know if it's more commonplace or easier to talk about in 2018 than it was, say, like 30 or 40 years ago with these things, where it was more hush-hush. But,
sure,
the seriousness and the tone of most of our shows, it's everything's, whether you're a skeptic or not, it's all of it's believable, with everyone's own spin on it. So I don't think anyone will look at you as any like freakish or crazy person when you speak of these things.
No, Pete, I would say the good majority of everyone we've spoken to are skeptics.
Yeah.
If not atheists altogether.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like I would describe myself as between atheist and pure agnostic, where I just don't care. Laissez-faire through and through for between politics and religion. Just let everybody be. Like, if I had to describe myself, atheist. Like political affiliation, none. F everybody. Screw them all. Like, but this stuff is absolutely real. Like there's, is there life after death? Who knows? You'd like to think there are. I'd love to think like my grandfather is here somewhere, just kind of watching and laughing. But there's definitely another plane of, of being that we don't see, that we just physically we can't see. I also think we probably all descended from aliens. As crazy as that sounds, I think that sounds a lot more rational than friggin' Adam and Eve. But, I think ghosts and powers and supernatural powers, I think it's absolutely real. Like, I don't see, find a reason how that stuff, that all the stuff that I just explained, how that happens without there being some sort of supernatural power.
Right.
No, that's,
and like, I'd like to,
it's tough to like put it down to one sentence, but there's whatever you think happens when it's done for us, there are things that just stick around. Yeah. There are things that stick around.
People's energy, where think about, in life, you are basically, who they're the 5 most common people you're hanging out with on a day-to-day basis. So think about 5 people you're with on a regular basis outside of your, immediate family. You're probably pretty similar to them, in every way. You have a lot of shared interests. But think of just like the general power that, and presence that people carry. And, some people have very strong personalities. Some people have, you just feel their presence in a room. When they die, I think that presence stays. I really think that presence stays. And I think everything around us can absorb that power and absorb that energy. The power of positive thinking and just vibes. Everyone's on that PMA vibe, but I just think people's vibes get absorbed by their surroundings. Like you surround yourself with positive people, positive shit's going to happen. You surround yourself with negative people, negative shit's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that just kind of will stay, like after death. I really think that sort of stuff will stay after death. I have one more pretty quick one because this one's not nearly as in depth, where there was a house that I was showing in Oxford, Mass, which is way out by Worcester. And it was an old dairy farm built in 1870 on Pockepoag Road. I actually looked this one up because I could remember it because I had a terrible relationship with the agent. She can't get hit by a car soon enough. And it was one of the 3. And again, out of the thousands of homes that I've shown, it's one of the 3 that I can vividly remember. Now, pull up to the house. All right, cool. Very beautiful old dairy farm. It literally had a dairy farm behind the farmhouse on acres and acres and acres of land. And I had a client that was interested in something like this. And pull up to the house. All right, cool. Creepy. Super, super creepy looking house. My client shows up. They showed up as I was pulling into the driveway. There's no other agent there. They just put everything on lockbox. So we let ourselves into the house. And it was just one of that immediate, it was cold out, so you really didn't know the difference. There was still like heat on in the house, but it was January or something like that. So it was still cold and it was really cold in the house. But it was just that immediate, wow, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel right. Wow. And we all felt it. And we're wandering through the house, and it was a big house. It was easily 3,000 square feet and like different wings of the house where you could tell that something, the original house was built in 1870, and then there was another wing added on here, and then, the family decided to add on another chunk here. There's an old dirt floor basement. That's how old the house was. But within seconds of walking into the house, like I just felt like, wow, this is just so not welcoming. Like it's just a feeling you can't describe. So there was still some furniture in the house, and it come to find out that the owners had been in the family for many, many years. The owners had died, and the estate was squabbling over who got what because there was no real formal like will or whatever chain of events that would lead to whoever's going to make the final executive decision for what's happening with the house. There was a lot of squabbling over that. But it was just like, wow, there's just so much like weird negative energy in this house. And I can't describe what that feels like. Like I can only say like, it just felt wrong. But, found out that the owners had died and had really been vacant for years. There's nothing in the refrigerator. There's just a bunch of like random furniture and books. And you could tell it was much older people that had been there. But just as we got deeper into this house, because it was basically one giant L, the shape of the house. So we got deeper and deeper into the house. It was just like this just feels wrong. But then got into one room, which was like a sewing room. Because like I said, there were still a lot of the former owner's possessions in it. Like go into the sewing room and it was just like, oh, okay, this is all right. Like, wow, why does this room not have this weird, like negative, heavy energy in it? Like, what the hell? Like, what? And I told my clients, I helped them sell a house up in Lynn, and they were looking to buy a huge piece of land just to build a compound on. So I was like, guys, come in here. Because we were saying like how weird it felt in the house. I was like, come in here. And they walked in. They're like, oh, this feels totally different. It's like, what? Like, this is so bizarre. And then we walked back out into like the hallway, which led off to like a couple bedrooms. and like went back into the sewing room, and I don't know why, like the sewing room just didn't have that heavy feeling in it. It wasn't the same heavy feeling as the house in Salem that I was in, but it was like very similar. Like you could still breathe, but it was just like something still like kind of pressing on you, and just like a weird heavy feeling. I can't really describe it, but we kept going in and out of the like room to room, and then bounced back into the sewing room. Like, dude, this is so like almost made a game out of it. Never saw anything. And to this day, I've never seen anything. Nothing's ever materialized in front of me. Had all these weird feelings and weird experiences, but I never saw anything materialize in front of me. But just had all like just weird feeling after weird feeling. So we went to like behind the house was an actual dairy farm. Like there was where like cows would go, and there was like this giant office, and we found a bunch of like mail. You throw mail on your dining room table, and it will sit there for a while, and everything has dates on it. There was a bunch of mail that was left just untouched, and it dated back to 1987. Like,
Jeez.
has this really been sitting here since 1987? Like, and there was like a newspaper from 1987 just sitting there, like someone had, just opened. It's like this whole thing might be a time capsule from 1987. I don't think anybody's lived in here ever since.
30 years.
Like,
wow.
It's insane. But it was just such a weird energy in that house. But for whatever reason, that sewing room was just like, there was so much more natural light in the sewing room. There was so much, it was just like a lighter feeling. I don't know if the light had something to do with it. The rest of the house had plenty of natural light. There was no curtains, nothing on the windows. The house was filled with light, but you keep walking into the sewing room, and it was just like, okay, I can breathe okay.
Safety.
And you go back out into the rest of it. Yeah, like safety. That's like the perfect word. Like it didn't feel, there was nothing like malevolent going on. There was nothing, like I didn't feel like I was in danger in this house, but it was just like a weird, like just like negativity. I don't know anything about the former owners. But yeah, it's just so weird when, you have these old houses and
it would make
weird
sense.
energy.
It would make sense that room for whoever lived there, that room was their sanctuary.
Maybe.
So sewing room, like you can use. I mean, it goes a little bit hand in hand with creativity.
Yeah.
Like taking a couple of hours off to do something that wasn't but like chores.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I never really thought of it like that, but that's an excellent point. Maybe that's like their, creative outlet room. That was their happy place.
Yeah, exactly.
And I have no idea whatever happened in the rest of the house, like what caused that feeling. I don't know. It's just one of those weird things, but just with such consistency, walking through this really big house, and it was literally just shaped like a big L. And you go upstairs on the second floor, this is like the safe room, and like you feel comfortable in that room. You walk out, and it's just like that weird heavy feeling. And like I said, in the thousands of houses that I've shown, and I've been in beautiful houses, multi-million-dollar mansions, and houses that I actually pulled a slug out of a wall that I traced that someone just shot through a window. Like I've been in houses like that where people have been shot at, and it's just like, all right, I don't get that feeling, but you get that weird feeling. And those are the three houses that I can remember that, a couple thousand homes that I've been in, that I've got really, really, really weird feelings in two of them, and just like true experience hearing stuff in the third. But it's just really weird, and it's just crazy how the energy is all around us.
Great stories, Jesse. Thanks so much for sharing all those with us. I'm sure as we move along, and as you move along in your career with real estate, you'll be getting quite a few more of those things.
Hopefully not.
It seems like you've been. Knows? Yeah, we'll see, man. Especially in New England and Boston area with the history and the how long some of these places have been in existence. You're surely going to come across some others.
In 12 years, only having 3 of them, so once every 4 years is good. But the crazy thing is, I'm totally due.
Yeah, I'm sure. I bet now that you rekindled all these thoughts and memories, something's going to happen. Hopefully it's nothing too bad, but it'll be cool to hear another story from you at some other point.
No, I'll let you know if something weird happens. I'll absolutely let you know. But
yeah, please do.
I'm totally due, because the last one was in 2012, maybe. So,
Oh, yeah,
you know, by
yeah.
law of averages, it's every 4 years. You know,
Yep.
but you know, who knows? Who knows?
Mhm.
I really hope I never see something materialize in front of me.
Yep. Well,
So,
now that you said it, you most surely will.
oh, dude, it's happening this weekend.
Yeah, I was just
Guarantee it's going to
thinking
happen
the
this
same
weekend.
thing.
All right, great, man. Anything you'd like to add, Klaus,
Yeah,
before
thank you
we
so much.
shut down the episode?
We talked about so much. I love the fact that we got to talk a little about records too, like those early years of heavy metal and the impact it had on us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I still love heavy metal. I still love that stuff, but you know, in a weird way, like just in the last week, thinking about this sort of stuff a lot more. It's like, Jesus, did I open like some weird thing that, you know, with basement doors, you know, when, you know, thanks heavy metal, thanks.